Sir, could you pretend to be my mom's date? The question landed softly, but it carried the weight of something much heavier. It wasn't playful. It wasn't mischievous. It was careful, almost rehearsed, as if the little girl had practiced saying it many times in her head before finally finding the courage to speak. Ethan Carter froze mid-step. He had been walking out of the cafe, one hand holding his car keys, the other gripping his phone as another unanswered email from his lawyer blinked on the screen. Life had become a series of unread messages and unreturned calls. He was used to ignoring the world, but this voice stopped him. He looked down. The little girl couldn't have been older than 7. She wore a pale yellow dress that had been washed too many times, and her sneakers were clean but worn at the edges. Her hair was tied into 2 uneven ponytails, as if she'd done them herself. She was holding a folded piece of paper tightly against her chest, her knuckles white. Behind her stood a woman. The woman's posture was straight, but exhaustion clung to her like a shadow. Her coat was thin for the season, her eyes alert in the way people get when they're used to being judged. She looked startled, then embarrassed, then afraid. "I'm so sorry," the woman said quickly. "She shouldn't have." "It's okay," Ethan interrupted gently, crouching so he was eye level with the child. "What's your name?" "Mia," the girl said. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "And why do you need someone to pretend to be your mom's date?" Ethan asked. Mia swallowed. Because all the other moms will be there with someone. And my mom says she doesn't need anyone, but I know she does." The woman's breath caught. "Mia," she whispered, "we talked about this." "I know, Mom," Mia said, turning just slightly. "But you're always sad after." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He stood up slowly. "What's the event?" The woman hesitated. "It's a school dinner. Fundraiser night. Parents only." "I wasn't going to go." "But you have to," Mia said quickly. "If you don't go, they'll think you don't care." The words weren't angry. They were practical, observant, spoken by a child who had seen too much. Ethan glanced at his watch. He had nowhere he needed to be. That realization surprised him. "I'm Ethan," he said to the woman. "What's your name?" "Lena," she replied softly. They stood there for a moment, 3 strangers connected by an impossible request. "I'm not asking for money," Lena said quickly, as if anticipating his refusal. She asked, "I didn't even know she was going to—" "It's tonight," Mia said. "In 2 hours." Ethan looked at the little girl again. Her eyes weren't begging. They were hopeful. That was worse. He had been a single father for 3 years now. His wife had passed suddenly, leaving behind silence and unanswered questions, and a daughter who used to ask him to read the same bedtime story every night, just so she wouldn't have to sleep alone. Mia reminded him of her. "I can stay for dinner," Ethan said slowly. "That's all, just dinner." Lena stared at him. "You don't have to—" "I know," he said. "But I can." Mia's face lit up like the lights of the cafe behind them. "Really?" "Really," Ethan said. She smiled so hard it looked like it hurt. 2 hours later, Ethan stood outside the school gymnasium, adjusting the collar of a jacket he hadn't worn in years. He felt ridiculous. He felt unprepared. And yet, he was here. Lena emerged from the building, her hair neatly tied back now, her coat replaced with a simple navy dress. She looked different, not transformed, but steadier. "Thank you for this," she said. "You can still leave if you want." Ethan smiled faintly. "I won't." Inside, the room buzzed with polite laughter and clinking glasses. Couples sat together at round tables, some leaning in close, others staring at their phones. Mia ran ahead, waving at classmates, then stopped, turned, and grabbed Ethan's hand. "Stay close," she whispered, and he did. They sat, they talked. They listened to speeches about donations and futures and opportunities. Ethan noticed the way Lena stiffened when someone asked how long they'd been together. He answered before she could. "Not long," he said calmly. "But long enough to know this is important." Lena glanced at him surprised. As the night went on, Ethan realized something unsettling. He wasn't pretending, not the listening, not the care, not the quiet way he made space for Lena to speak without pressure, not the way Mia leaned against him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Across the room, someone watched them. A man in an expensive suit, sharp eyes, assessing. Ethan didn't notice, but this night, this small act of kindness had already set something in motion, and none of them knew just how much it was about to change their lives. If you believe one small choice can change everything, stay with us. This story has only just begun. The dinner ended with polite applause and forced smiles, but the tension didn't disappear when the chairs were stacked and the lights dimmed. It followed them into the cold night air, clinging to questions that hadn't been asked out loud. Mia skipped ahead toward the parking lot, humming softly, her happiness untouched by adult uncertainty. "She hasn't smiled like that in weeks," Lena said quietly. Ethan watched the little girl twirl once, then stopped to wait for them. "Kids know when something matters," he replied. Lena nodded. "I didn't want to come tonight. These events, they make you feel like you're being measured." "Measured against what?" Ethan asked. "Against stability," she said honestly. "Against families that look complete." Ethan understood more than he let on. "Complete doesn't always mean happy." They walked in silence for a few steps. Then Lena stopped. "I should say this now," she said, turning to face him. "What you did tonight, it helped Mia. But I don't want this to turn into something confusing for her." "I agree," Ethan said immediately. "This was one evening, nothing more." Mia looked back at them, sensing the shift. "Are you still coming with us?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "I'll walk you to the car." That was enough for her. She reached out and slipped her hand into his again. Something in Ethan's chest tightened. At the car, Lena hesitated before opening the door. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Ethan replied. "Just promise me something." "What?" "Don't stop going to things like this, even if it's uncomfortable." Lena laughed softly, without humor. "Easy for you to say." Ethan met her eyes. "It wasn't always easy for me either." That surprised her. She studied his face, as if seeing him properly for the first time. "You have a daughter," she said. "Yes." "She passed?" Lena asked gently. "My wife did," Ethan replied. "My daughter's with my sister tonight." "I'm sorry," Lena said. "So am I," he answered. Mia climbed into the back seat, still smiling. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked hopefully. Lena hesitated. "It's late, sweetie." Ethan glanced at his watch, then shrugged. "One scoop won't hurt." Mia gasped, as if he'd offered her the moon. They ended up at a small ice cream shop still open despite the hour. The neon lights buzzed softly. Mia pressed her face to the glass, debating flavors with complete seriousness. Lena sat across from Ethan, stirring her cup absent-mindedly. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," Ethan said. "That's the part that scares me." Ethan leaned back. "Why?" "Because kindness like that, it usually comes with strings." Ethan didn't answer immediately. He thought of boardrooms and contracts, of favors disguised as generosity. "Sometimes," he said, "but not always." Mia returned with a chocolate cone bigger than her hand. "You should come to my birthday," she announced. Lena froze. "Mia." "It's okay," Ethan said calmly. "When is it?" "Next month." "That's far away," Lena said quickly. "He's very busy." Ethan smiled faintly. "We'll see." Mia accepted that answer easily. Later, when they stood outside the shop, Lena finally asked the question she'd been holding back. "Why did you say yes?" Ethan considered lying. It would have been easier. "And someone said no." Lena felt her throat tighten. "What happened?" "She learned not to ask again," Ethan replied. "I promised myself I'd never be the reason a child stopped believing people could be kind." Lena looked at him differently now. "You're not what I expected." He smiled. "Neither are you." They exchanged numbers, though neither said it out loud. It felt unspoken but inevitable. That night, after Mia fell asleep clutching her ice cream spoon like a trophy, Lena sat at the kitchen table replaying the evening. The The way Ethan listened, the way he never spoke over her, the way Mia had leaned into him so naturally. She told herself it meant nothing. Across town, Ethan sat in his quiet house, staring at a photo on the mantel. His daughter at 6, laughing. He hadn't felt this unsettled in a long time. The next morning, his phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "This is Thomas Hale," the voice said. "We met briefly last night. I was at the school dinner." Ethan frowned. "Yes? I believe you were sitting with Lena Rivera." "Yes," Ethan said cautiously. There was a pause. Then, "We need to talk." Ethan looked out the window, the city stretching awake beneath him. He didn't know it yet, but the simple favor he'd agreed to was about to pull him into a story far bigger than a pretend date. And there was no turning back now. Ethan didn't return Thomas Hale's call right away. He spent the morning distracted, rereading emails without absorbing them, standing in rooms without remembering why he'd entered them. Thomas Hale's name echoed in his mind. The man's tone had been polite, but there was an edge beneath it, one that came from being used to answers. By noon, Ethan gave in and called back. They agreed to meet at a quiet restaurant downtown. Neutral ground, public, safe. Thomas was already there when Ethan arrived, seated perfectly straight, hands folded on the table. He looked even sharper in daylight. Wealth had carved confidence into his posture. "Mr. Carter," Thomas said, standing to shake his hand. "Thank you for coming." Ethan sat. "You said you wanted to talk." "Yes," Thomas replied smoothly. "About Lena." Ethan kept his expression neutral. "What about her?" Thomas studied him for a moment. "How long have you known her?" "Less than a day," Ethan said honestly. Thomas smiled thinly. "Then allow me to give you context." He leaned forward. "Lena Rivera used to work for my family's foundation. She was exceptional, too exceptional." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means she saw things others didn't," Thomas said. "Asked questions that made people uncomfortable." "And that's a problem?" Ethan asked. "It became one," Thomas replied. "She accused my brother of mismanaging funds. There was an investigation." "And?" "And the board chose to believe him," Thomas said calmly. Lena was dismissed. Ethan felt something harden inside him. "So, you're here to warn me about her?" "I'm here to warn you about involvement," Thomas corrected. "My brother doesn't like loose ends." Ethan leaned back. "Is this a threat?" Thomas chuckled softly. "No, advice." Ethan stood. "Then keep it. Whatever Lena's past is, it's hers. I didn't pretend to be her date for politics." Thomas's smile vanished. "Be careful, Mr. Carter. Kind gestures can be misinterpreted." Ethan left without responding. That evening, Lena noticed immediately that something was different. "You're quiet," she said, as Ethan walked Mia home from school with them. The three of them had fallen into a routine faster than expected. Short walks, shared smiles, easy conversation. "I met someone today," Ethan said. Lena stiffened. "Who?" "Thomas Hale." Her face drained of color. "So he found you," she whispered. "Mia," Ethan said gently, "can you run ahead?" "I'll be right there." Mia nodded and skipped forward. Lena stopped walking. "What did he say?" "He warned me," Ethan replied. "About you." Lena laughed bitterly. "Of course he did." "Tell me the truth," Ethan said quietly. She hesitated, then exhaled. "I worked for their foundation. I found irregularities. Money that didn't add up. When I pushed, I was removed." "Did you report it?" Ethan asked. "Yes," she said. "And nothing happened. My reputation took the hit instead." "And Mia?" Ethan asked gently. "She was 4, Lena replied. "Her father left when things got hard. I became careful after that." Ethan absorbed this. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you didn't ask," Lena said. "And because I didn't want your kindness to turn into pity." Ethan nodded slowly. "It won't." She looked at him, searching his face. "You don't even know what you're stepping into." "I do," Ethan said. "I'm stepping into the truth." From that moment, the air between them changed. They were no longer pretending. Over the next week, Ethan saw more of Lena's world. The small apartment, the spreadsheets she still kept, just in case. The way Mia watched her mother with quiet admiration. One evening, as Mia colored at the table, Lena showed Ethan a folder. Documents, dates, transfers. "This is why they're nervous," she said. Ethan scanned the pages, his jaw tightening. "This isn't small." "No," Lena replied. "It's systematic." "You kept all this?" Ethan asked. "For Mia," Lena said simply. "In case one day I needed to explain why I didn't back down." Ethan closed the folder. "You shouldn't be alone with this." Lena met his gaze. "I'm not asking you to fight my battles." "I know," Ethan said. "I'm offering to stand with you." Mia looked up. "Are you staying for dinner?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "If that's okay." "It is," Mia said firmly. Later that night, after Mia was asleep, Lena and Ethan sat in silence, the weight of unspoken things pressing gently between them. "This started as a lie," Lena said softly. Ethan nodded. "But it doesn't have to end that way." She turned to him. "What if this costs you?" Ethan thought of his company, his name, his quiet life. Then he thought of Mia asking him not to leave. "Some things are worth the cost," he said. Outside, the city hummed, unaware that lines had been crossed that could not be uncrossed. The pretend date was over. What came next would require courage, truth, and a choice neither of them could undo. The pressure didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly, disguised as coincidence. Lena's job applications began disappearing into silence. Calls that had once been promising suddenly went unanswered. A freelance contract she depended on was canceled without explanation. Even Mia noticed. "Mom," she asked one evening, "did I do something wrong at school?" Lena froze. "Why would you think that?" "Because you're tired again," Mia said softly. Lena hugged her tightly. "No, sweetheart, none of this is because of you." But after Mia went to bed, Lena sat at the kitchen table staring at unpaid bills, her hands trembling despite her effort to stay calm. Ethan noticed the change immediately. "You're carrying too much alone," he said the next day as they walked together. "I said I could handle it," Lena replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "You are handling it," Ethan said. "That doesn't mean you have to isolate yourself." She stopped walking. "You don't understand how far they'll go." "I do," Ethan replied quietly. "That's why I'm still here." That night, Ethan made a call he had avoided for years. To his board, to his legal team, to people who owed him loyalty, not favors. He didn't mention Lena's name at first. He spoke only of due diligence, transparency, and an opportunity to correct a long-standing wrong. When he finally laid the documents on the conference table, the room fell silent. "This implicates the Hale Foundation," one advisor said carefully. "It implicates corruption," Ethan corrected. "Are you prepared for retaliation?" another asked. Ethan thought of Mia waiting at the window every afternoon. "Yes." The next morning, Lena received a call from an investigative journalist. "I was given your name," the woman said. "And a file." Lena's hands shook. "By who?" "I can't say," the journalist replied. "But it's credible, and I'd like to hear your side." Lena hung up and stared at the phone. When Ethan arrived later that day, she didn't wait for him to speak. "You did this," she said. "I helped open a door," Ethan replied. "You decide whether to walk through it." "What if it destroys everything?" Lena asked. "What if it fixes something?" Ethan countered. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." The article dropped a week later. It didn't name Lena at first. It focused on numbers, discrepancies, and internal emails that raised serious questions. The Hale Foundation issued a statement denying wrongdoing. But denial wasn't enough anymore. Phones rang, boards convened, investigations reopened. Thomas Hale called Ethan again. This time there was no politeness. "You've crossed a line," Thomas said sharply. "I corrected one," Ethan replied. "You're involving a child," Thomas snapped. "No," Ethan said coldly. "You are." When Lena's name was finally mentioned publicly, the tone shifted. Former colleagues came forward. Stories aligned. Patterns emerged, and Lena's phone began ringing again. But this time, with apologies. Mia felt the change before she understood it. Her mother laughed more, slept better, cooked meals without staring into space. "Is everything okay now?" Mia asked one night. Lena smiled. "It's getting there." Mia looked at Ethan, who was sitting on the floor helping her with a puzzle. "Is he staying?" Lena's breath caught. Ethan looked up. He didn't answer for her. "That's not my choice alone," he said gently. Mia nodded thoughtfully. "I hope you do." Later, when Mia was asleep, Lena stood by the window. "I never meant for you to be part of this," she said. "I know," Ethan replied. "And yet, you are." "Yes," she turned to him. "Why?" Ethan didn't rush this answer. "Because pretending showed me something real, and I don't want to walk away from it." Lena's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "I'm scared." "So am I," Ethan admitted. "But not of this." Outside, sirens echoed faintly in the distance. The world kept moving, indifferent to the quiet courage forming in that small apartment. They weren't celebrating, they were bracing, because the final response hadn't come yet. And when it did, it would test everything they'd built, from one small, brave question asked by a little girl who just wanted her mother to feel less alone. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. What had begun as whispered suspicion turned into formal inquiries, audits, and emergency board meetings. The Hale Foundation's name, once synonymous with prestige, was now attached to words like accountability and reform. The family released carefully written statements, but the silence behind them was louder. Lena watched the news with the sound turned low. Mia curled beside her on the couch. "Are they talking about you?" Mia asked. "Not exactly," Lena replied, brushing her hair gently. "They're talking about the truth." Mia nodded as if that made perfect sense. Ethan arrived later that evening with takeout and an unfamiliar expression. One part relief, one part resolve. "It's over," he said. Lena looked up. "Over?" "My board voted unanimously," Ethan explained. "They're supporting the investigation publicly. The Foundation's leadership is stepping down." Lena covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I didn't think they'd ever listen." "They didn't," Ethan said softly. "They were forced to." For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Mia broke the silence. "Does this mean Mom doesn't have to be scared anymore?" Lena pulled her into a hug. "It means we can breathe." In the weeks that followed, life began to reshape itself. Lena was offered a position at a nonprofit committed to transparency. Not as a symbol, but as a leader. She accepted on her own terms, with boundaries she never would have dared to set before. Ethan stepped back from the spotlight, redirecting resources quietly, intentionally. He didn't seek praise, he didn't need it. What mattered was the small, ordinary moments that returned. School mornings without tension, dinners filled with laughter, evenings where Mia insisted on reading stories to both of them at once. One afternoon, months later, the three of them stood in the same cafe where it had all begun. Mia held a folded piece of paper again. Ethan smiled knowingly. "Another question?" She nodded. "Yes, but this one's different." She handed the paper to her mother. Lena unfolded it slowly. It was a drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands. "I don't need pretending anymore," Mia said. "I just want us." Lena's eyes filled as she knelt down. "Me too." She looked up at Ethan, vulnerability and strength woven together. "If you're still willing." Ethan didn't answer with words. He reached out and took her hand. Not as a favor, not as a role, but as a choice. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that something extraordinary had quietly concluded inside a small cafe. It hadn't started with power or money. It started with a child's courage. And it ended with 3 lives choosing truth over fear, kindness over convenience, and something real over pretending. If this story reminded you that one question can change everything, remember to carry that kindness forward. Because sometimes the smallest voices ask the bravest things, and the answer can reshape the world.